Shalom, shalom. My name is Yair Davidiy. I'm speaking to you from the land of Israel, from an area on the outskirts of Jerusalem, near the biblical site of Bethlehem, and I'm speaking to you on liberated land which has been liberated from its illegal Arab oppressors and squatters. It has now begun to be resettled by Jewish pioneers. This is the truth, this is the reality, and this is what is desirable, and God willing it will continue, become greater and greater as time progresses. To all the events that at present we're concerned with the identity of the lost 10 tribes, our organization Brit-Am, Hebrew Nations, researches the whereabouts of the lost 10 tribes. We have found them amongst Western nations, that is, the Western nations including Ireland, the British Isles in general, also Scandinavia, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Netherlands, part of France, Belgium, Switzerland, and their offshoots. This also includes North America, Canada and USA, Australia, New Zealand, and portion of South Africa. We're not saying that everyone in these areas are descended from lost 10 tribes of Israel, because they are not. We are saying that these areas are where the lost 10 tribes were, where the Bible says they will be in the end times. So we are now getting close to the end times. So the lost 10 tribes are amongst these peoples, and there's no arousal at present in the direction of Hebrew identity, of Christians getting back to their Jewish roots, as if to say, to their Hebrew origins, and also people researching their ancestry and wanting to know where they came from, who they are, because this is important. And we can provide the answers to some of those who are searching, because if you are searching and if you have certain tendencies in a particular direction, the chances are that you too are descendants of Israel, descendants of the ancient Israelites, who were originally 12 tribes of Israel. These 12 tribes of Israel divided into two different sections. The majority of them, that is the northern 10 tribes, were taken away by the Assyrians and lost consciousness of their ancestry. But as we said, we have traced them, and we have shown through archaeology and through linguistics and historical sources in general that they are now to be found amongst Western nations. And this is confirmed by the Bible, by biblical passages, and our understanding of these biblical passages correlates or corresponds with Jewish sages who also wrote along the same lines as we present the case to be. Now, one of the passages concerning the lost 10 tribes in the end times is Isaiah chapter 11. Isaiah chapter 11 speaks of the lost 10 tribes returning. And this passage that we are about to speak about also specifically apparently indicates that the lost 10 tribes will be returning from the British Isles. That is one of the areas where the lost 10 tribes will be returning from, and the British Isles are referred to the Isles of the Sea. And the term islands of the sea was a classical term in general. It's an accepted term for the British Isles. It almost could be considered an official denomination for them, denominator. And anyway, this is the passage. The passage concerns Isaiah 11, beginning from verse 11, chapter 11, verse 11, Isaiah. It says, it will happen on that day that the Lord will again recover the second time with his hand the remnants of his people who will remain from Assyria, Egypt, Patras, Cush, Elam, Shinar, Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And he will lift up a standard for the nations and assemble the banished ones of Israel and gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. And the jealousy of Ephraim will depart, and those who harass Judah will be cut off. Ephraim will not be jealous of Judah, and Judah will not harass Ephraim. They will swoop down on the slopes of the Philistines on the west, but together they will plunder the sons of the east and possess Edom and Moab, and the sons of Ammon will be subject to them. So this is how the verses are translated in the New American Standard Bible. Other translations say more or less the same thing. But we have looked at the original Hebrew, and we have come up with a slightly difference in the meaning of the simple Hebrew text. We'll read it out for your information so that you can get an impression of what it says. Though it's not really relevant, it's not really pertinent, it's not important for the message of this talk, it is worth knowing at all events the alternative translation of this section of Isaiah. So this is how we have translated it, basing ourselves on the previous translations, but changing it according to the simple meaning of the Hebrew text in Hebrew as we understand it. So it says, beginning from Isaiah 11:11, Isaiah 11:11, it says, it will happen on that day that Adonai, the Master, that is, will once again take possession with his hand of the remnant of his people who will remain from having been drawn out of Assyria, out of Mitzrayim, out of Patros, out of Cush, out of Elam, out of Shinar, out of Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And lift up a standard for the nations, assemble the banished ones of Israel, and gather the dispersed of Judah. That is, the banished ones of Israel, those who have been cast out in Hebrew, the Nidhei Israel, those who have been cast out because, as the sages said, the lost in tribes were cast out to specific areas where they remained together as coherent entities, whereas the Jews were dispersed and were scattered all over the earth. But paradoxically, the Jews were the ones who retained the consciousness of their ancestry, whereas the others, the lost in tribes, the majority of the Israelites lost it, but they stayed together. Perhaps this was to compensate, to ensure that despite having lost consciousness of who they were, by staying together they intermixed with other peoples less and retained more of their original racial or ethnic, ones could say, coherence. Anyway, it continues. Then the jealousy of Ephraim will depart, and the oppressors of Judah will be cut off. Ephraim will not be jealous of Judah, and Judah will not harass Ephraim. In verse 11:14, it says, they will fly the Philistines out by wing to the west. The Philistines, that is the Palestinians, will be picked up and put on planes and flown out to the west according to the Hebrew meaning. As it says, Ephraim and Judah together will do this. We identify Ephraim as being amongst the British, especially, but also, and the American Anglo-Saxon peoples in general, having an special expression or component, an extra component, one could say, amongst the British, whereas the Americans were to be dominated more by the characteristics of Manasseh. Ephraim and Manasseh were the two sons of Joseph. Therefore, we find the Joseph to have been predominant amongst English-speaking peoples. And so that is what the verses say. And this is what the verses say, and this is of interest, and also tells us that the tribes, the Israelites, the dispersed of Israelites, will return from Assyria, that is, from having been exiled to Assyria. From Egypt, it says that is in Mitzrayim, which also in those days could have been an area in the north, in the region of Armenia, where the lost tribes were taken to, and from there they moved further northwards beyond the Caucasus Mountains into southern Russia, and they joined up, one could say, confederated with the Cimmerians and the Scythians and the Goths, and moved to the west, whereas others of them, together with the Cimmerians, had moved west earlier, and gave rise or contributed to the development of Celtic civilization in western places. And others had been taken straight away by sea to the west by Edomites directing Philistines and Phoenician shipping maritime enterprise and colonization in the British Isles and western regions. At all events, and by different ways and in different paths, all of the lost tribes had moved to the west, and they all had congregated in the west, and we have found them in these western regions that we spoke of above. And also, especially we find them in the British Isles. Now, one of the areas that it mentioned that lost tribes will return from having been in, according to Isaiah 11, is the islands of the sea. That is, they will return from the islands of the sea. Now, islands of the sea could mean anywhere, but we are speaking of a region that has to be to the north and the west of the land of Israel, as we are told in the book of Hosea, and other regions, and so that doesn't leave us much options open. And the best option available, it would be the British Isles based on that alone, and we have numerous other proofs indicating the British Isles and the Anglo-Saxon peoples, the English-speaking peoples, that is, including Celtic regions, are descended from lost tribes of Israel, and they did fulfill all of the prophecies concerning them. But not only that, but we find in classical literature, that is the literature of Greek and Roman writers, that islands of the sea was a term applied to the British Isles. It was not only a designation, a geographical description, it is as if to say a term, a name given to them. So, and this world of classical terminology was the same world that the Assyrians and Babylonians had used before the Greeks and the Romans. The Greeks and the Romans had inherited it from them, taken it over from them, and developed it. And so this would have been the same terminology, the same terms of reference that the prophets themselves would have been familiar with and spoken in. So this is itself a proof. Isaiah says that the lost in tribes will come back from the islands of the sea. Islands of the sea is what could be considered an official term at that time of the British Isles. And we have this. We have a Latin term. In Latin writings, the British Isles are referred to as Oceanae Insulae, or islands of the ocean. Islands of the ocean, islands of the sea, one and the same thing. We find, if we look it up under the heading Oceanae Insulae in Wikipedia, of all places, has a lot of sources confirming this statement of ours. The islands of the sea was a term applied to Britain, and the term was used by indigenous sources during the post-Roman period, who also used the term Oceanae Insulae. It's a term for the islands in the Atlantic and elsewhere. It quotes from the life of St. Columba, and also it also mentions Adomnan of Iona, an Irish monk, in the 600s CE. Also Jordanius in 551 in the Getica. He also mentions the islands of the sea, islands of the ocean, and includes in this term North Atlantic area in general, and Scandinavia. Bede refers to the islands of the ocean as applying to Britain. Isidore Seville's etymology also uses this term. He lists Britannia Island and Scotia Hibernia and many other, Thule, that is Scandinavia, and many other, or Iceland, many other islands as islands or islands of the ocean. And so too we have other sources using this term. So the term was applied to the British Isles, the term was recognised as applicable to the British Isles, and therefore this strengthens the obvious conclusion that must be drawn from other sources and from the very context. The British Isles is where concerning lost in tribes, where the lost in tribes will come from, is a place of the Isles of the ocean, and they are one and the same entity. Thank you. May the Lord God of Israel bless you.